Attention all warriors. Are you tired of the mundane? Looking for a new and exciting challenge? The Irish Peacekeeping Ninja Force is seeking new recruits to join our ranks. If you're a highly skilled, retired individual with a full, clean EU driver's license, then we're the organisation for you. As a member of our elite force, you'll be trained in the art of stealth and combat, ready to face any threat that comes your way. If you have a passion for justice, then the Irish Peacekeeping Ninja Force has a role for you. Take on the challenge and become part of something bigger than yourself. Apply now to join our ranks. Together, we will work to create a world free of snakes and rats.
Interesting flavours there, Pierce.
It tastes like cat shit.
Pierce,
what have you been making this coffee with?
We were all out of cat piss. Did what I had to do.
God. Pierce, why are you wearing a mic? Usually you just serve us the coffee and then you leave. And what is your wheel doing here, taking up all this space?
I just got it back from Mick's Wheel Repair Shop.
It keeps
and
breaking on you.
parlour in Kulokland.
Yeah,
just happened to have it here.
Are you happy to roll it?
I will roll it. Let's roll it.
Yeah.
Okay, roll it, baby, roll it.
By the way, could you give me that flapjack thing that's lying on the ground there that looks like a cat's turd? Actually, looks quite tasty.
Here we go.
The best bits.
I'll use small words that you'll be sure to understand, you warthog-faced buffoon.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
You are stupid, you have no taste, a lousy sense of humor, and you smell.
Don't call me stupid.
Hello and welcome to the Best Bits, a movie podcast where we pick our favourite scenes, or sometimes do.
He's stumbling.
Because we're not doing that this episode. This is your co-host Kevin, a writer of 1-bit films and 3-bit episodes of TV, and I'm joined as always by my co-host of 3 films plus a Christmas special, Will Collins, and also my co-host of 2 films, Pierce.
Two podcasts.
Hello everyone, and hello Pierce. How are you getting on?
Hello. It's great to see you again.
Good to have you back in the pod booth.
It's lovely. It smells delightful. You put in a new air freshener.
That's just the cat shit.
Stuffed in Kevin's old socks.
It's woody. It kind of has a woody smell to it.
What are we going to do, Pierce? How are we going to handle this?
Yeah, you said you have an idea.
I have an idea, so I'm going to spin the wheel, and let's see if a theme comes up.
We'll move over a small bit because this looks very rickety. It could come flying off that hinge.
Let's give it one more roll. Let's just see. Okay, so we give it a little spin.
Okay, now, okay.
Okay, this is interesting. Here's today's topic: is made-for-TV movies.
Wow, I should have known that because that's what the title of the episode is.
That is,
Yeah.
Incredible.
Not to be confused with Madeley TV Moves, which is just a YouTube compilation of Richard Madeley dancing on This Morning.
Full frontal Madeley.
So
That's better than any movie if you ask me.
it was.
You know what's amazingly coincidental is that I've actually had this incredible urge to watch a number of made-for-TV movies this past week. And I was just Googling about made-for-TV movies this morning. So I have this kind of I have a collection of facts. Do you know what the first precursor to a made-for-TV movie was?
I would guess that it's something that was in cinemas.
Nope. It was actually a TV movie, right? But it was...
Hang on a second, you've lost me already. The precursor to a made-for-TV movie was actually a TV movie.
This is you're like the Riddler. Well,
the precursor to made-for-TV movies, a live feature was first aired in 1944 in New York called "Talk Faster, Mister," and that is the first time we had a feature.
Do you mean
film,
like a recorded play?
It was it was written specifically for the television and broadcast live on TV. Yeah, and there wasn't another one until 1957 called The Pied Piper of Hamelin, and that starred Van Johnson. And that was, so the stuff that was being made were kind of like family musicals, and they were just being broadcast on television directly.
That Piper, it's magic, the things he can do. Do you know?
What channel was putting them out?
They were a local New York channel called WABC. BD.
This is the Dumont Television Network.
New York's window on the world.
But do you know, because I'm coming in, because I just Googled this morning, which is fucking so weird, right? Mm-hmm. But the term made-for-TV movie was coined in the US in the early 1960s. And it was, as you probably know, an incentive to pull movie audiences away from going out to the cinema and keep them in front of their television screens where networks could get money off advertisements and whatnot.
You know, if you were to follow a busy doctor as he makes his daily round of calls, you'd find yourself having a mighty busy time keeping up with him. Time out for many men of medicine usually means just long enough to enjoy a cigarette. And because they know what a pleasure it is to smoke a mild, good-tasting cigarette, they're particular about the brand they choose. See how Camels agree with your throat. See how mild and good-tasting a cigarette can be.
And the first generally acknowledged TV movie was a film called See How They Run, which debuted on NBC October 7th, 1964.
What was it about?
Haven't a clue. I haven't a clue.
That's good.
It's about people who run and maybe people who watch people run.
Podbot?
Here's the trailer.
Tonight at 8, a notebook, murder and deception spark an international chase. See how they run.
Jamesy, could it be Daddy's coat he's after?
Watch out, he's got a gun!
Get into the apartment. Telephone the police.
John Forsythe and Seta Berger star in See How They Run, tonight at 8 on Channel 48.
And the second film to be considered a television movie was Don Siegel's The Hanged Man.
Now, I've invested 6 years of my life in this project. For 6 years, we've been building the government's case against Seeger. We broke his hold on the Union by forcing an open election. Now it's just a matter of time. Seeger is finished.
And it was also broadcast on NBC 1964. So there you go. That's the very, very beginnings of...
Okay.
It's funny.
So there you go.
When you think about it, like, you know, a lot of the movies that we love, probably the first time we saw them was on TV rather than like in the cinema too, you know. I think I've seen interviews with Scorsese talking about that, you know, I think he saw maybe The Red Shoes or something for the first time when he was a kid on TV, on a black and white TV, and, you know, had to wait, didn't realize, you know, just the amazing color and vibrancy of it until he saw it years later in the cinema.
Oh, wow. So it was like watching snooker on a black and white TV.
Yeah.
I remember with either my communion money or confirmation money, I actually splashed out and bought one of those portable TVs that had like a 2-inch screen. It was like really small.
It's like the size of a phone.
But I used, it was only 2 or 3 inches. And I remember watching The Road Warrior on that, aired on RTE. It like had an aerial and antenna. So you tuned
it was
in.
UHF and VHF were the two things.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
They were like a game controller almost.
Well, this one kind of was, it was chunky because it had like a cathode ray tube, like, you know, and, but, oh my God, watching the Road Warrior and the small black and white TV I was still sucked in, still loved it. So yeah, that's a made-for-TV movie in my head now.
Can you remember, either of you, what the first made-for-TV movie was that you saw? Did you distinguish them? Because I didn't.
Actually can. I think I can.
Okay.
There was one about a true story about a guy who ran a marathon across the US or ran across Canada. He had 2 artificial legs.
You sure it wasn't Forrest Gump?
No, artificial legs. And oh my God, yeah, I remember that, but I distinctly remember, this is a TV movie, and it was something different. It wasn't like a regular movie.
Because I don't understand what you're doing. So do you understand what I'm doing?
In 1980, Terry Fox, a young athlete, decided to run across Canada. He called it his Marathon of Hope. But for a boy with only one leg, it was a marathon of courage. Starring Robert Duvall.
I don't understand this, but I love you.
Christopher Makepeace.
Hey, everybody under sheets and blankets. Terry Fox is here on Marathon of Hope.
And Eric Fryer as Terry Fox.
People say I have courage. Well, I'm not just the only one.
The story of Terry Fox, who had the heart of a champion. And half his journey was still ahead.
So that's the one I remember distinctly.
Can we define like what the characteristics are of a TV movie, do we think? Is it kind of budget, I suppose, and maybe a
classically
mostly studio set, maybe?
Classically, a made-for-TV movie has a big star, usually, and it has a fairly low budget. And sometimes, back in the day, they used to have big stars like Liv Marin, Ronald Reagan, and whatnot. And
the president, they'd get the president to star in them.
Yeah.
They went all out.
You were a great leader. You proved yourself a statesman.
Well, I can change that in a hurry.
In 1988 or 1990, he was bored. He had to do something. So usually it has a fairly tight, a slightly bigger budget than a TV show would have, but not as big as a feature film from a studio would have. And generally using existing sets or using existing locations.
I have different parameters I want to put on it.
Go on.
Because I don't want to include streaming movies in this. I think it's a totally different art form. Because a lot of TV movies, they were built around being shown on TV. So they'd build in act breaks. They'd have commercial breaks. And so you'd have 7-8 acts in a feature-length TV movie.
But then they would recut those films later on and release them as
overseas,
theatrical features later on and add in stuff.
They'd even do it from like Canadian TV movies that would get theatrical releases in the US. Like the very first Video Nasty was a film called Visiting Hours. It starred Lee Grant, and it was a Canadian made-for-TV movie.
In this hospital, your next visit may be your last.
All visitors, please leave the hospital. Dr. Len
Visiting Hours, so frightening you may never recover. Starring Lee Grant, William Shatner, Linda Pearl.
I mean, when you were asking earlier there, Kevin, what was the first TV movie that you remember? I'm sure, we wouldn't have been able to really differentiate, but I'm sure growing up on RTE, Saturday afternoons, Sunday afternoons, that would have been the slot that, a lot of these kind of TV movies would have been.
Radio Telefisheren, you're watching RTE 1.
Pretty sure I saw like the Elvis TV movie, on a wet Saturday or Sunday afternoon. Probably didn't watch all of it, but they were definitely there to fill up the schedules.
I tried to track that down for this topic and I couldn't find it. Because I don't think I've ever seen it. Is it good?
Well, Will, funny you should ask. Yeah, from 1979, Elvis, directed by John Carpenter in 30 days, for God's sake. And this is John Carpenter post-Halloween and before The Thing. And it is a long ass.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Wait a second. It came out in 79.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Because he got the job on Elvis because he did the music for Halloween. They thought he's got a musical ability. He'd be good to do this. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it was, and apparently, he's such a music fan and a huge Elvis fan. That's what kind of convinced him really to do the job. I think ultimately, like when he's talked about it in interviews, he's not very happy with it because the editing and everything was taken away from him. So, but still, 30 days, he shot this movie it's as long as Baz Luhrmann's most recent effort.
Wow.
And if you've seen Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, then you will have seen a lot of this film.
It's a full frontal male movie?
well, the start of Walk Hard when they go and find Dewey Cox.
Mr. Cox. Give him a minute, son. Dewey Cox needs to think about his entire life before he plays.
And literally that's pretty much what happens at the start of this movie. Elvis is kind of there sitting alone in a room and the entire thing is told in flashback just before he's about to go on stage again for the first time in years. I think like the thing that really works in its favor is that we don't have Tom Hanks playing Colonel Tom Parker and we don't have that god-awful kind of voiceover that he does in Baz Luhrmann's thing, which just annoys the hell out of me. In fact, Colonel Tom is barely in this, probably because I think he was still alive, probably.
Oh, okay.
He's played by Pat Single, who, that name you mightn't kind of know, but if I told you he played Commissioner Gordon in Tim Burton's Batman.
Yeah.
What the hell's going on?
Christ, what are you trying to do, blow the collar?
I'm in charge here, not Carl Grissom. This is Commissioner Gordon.
But really, the film, it's all about kind of reestablishing Elvis's reputation after his fairly pitiful death, less than 2 years previously. There's very little mention of drugs. Actually, there's no real mention of the comeback special either, which obviously there's a big build-up to in Baz Luhrmann's film.
Is there any mention of his banana and peanut butter fried sandwiches?
There's 2 hours of it. No, there's that's all they concentrate on. It's just 2 hours of Elvis eating sandwiches.
And of course, how is Kurt Russell in the role?
Kurt Russell is fantastic, as was the actor in Baz Luhrmann's film as well. I actually did enjoy Baz Luhrmann's. If you took Tom Hanks,
Elvis.
Took Tom Hanks out of it, I thought the rest of it. I think actually it's a testimony to just how strong, just that music. The music is so incredible that for all the whiz bang and, it gets annoying after a while of Baz Luhrmann's style, the music just carries you through. But yeah, Kurt Russell is fantastic. Again, I think he was about 28 or something like that when he made this movie. So again, you have kind of ridiculous scenes of him in the school. It's bloody Elvis there, you know what I mean? Like, he might as well grow, he's about 2 years off from playing, in The Thing. You know what I mean? You might as well have a full beard on as well while he's at it.
But it's 1950s school, so, they all look like they were in their 40s back then.
They all look ancient.
I've seen Grease.
Yeah.
He did things to an audience no performer had ever done before. He electrified millions on television, on the Hollywood screen, but most of all, in person.
I'll sing a song for you.
His name was Elvis. The singing sensation who made the girls scream and their men explode. Elvis, the way the world saw him.
Come on, Elvis, give us a break. You and Natalie gonna get married?
The way he really was.
I want to be able to walk around and see things. All the mobs of people, just be free. Just be plain little old me instead of the image. You did, don't you? Well, since my baby left me,
the way you'll always remember him. Kurt Russell is Elvis.
You think they care what I think? No way!
But they're producers. They're
my songs! They got no right!
Shelley Winters is his mother.
I don't know if I can get used to all these changes.
Bing Russell is Vernon Presley.
I want you to be happy, son.
Pat Hingle is Colonel Parker.
You are a phenomenon. You're something, son, that comes along once in a lifetime. Nobody is ever going to forget you.
Susan Hubley is Priscilla. Elvis, the motion picture that reveals the whole story of the man whose music moved the world. Elvis, the king lives on.
Basically about an hour and a half of the movie is really just about Elvis and his mum, to be honest. It's concentrating on that relationship. And then the last hour is basically Elvis and Priscilla. And Priscilla, again, in real life was 14 when she met Elvis. And in this film, she's played by 28-year-old Susan Hubley is the actress's name. And the weirdest scene in the film has to be when Elvis rings her father. He's gone back to the States, and he's asking for Priscilla to be sent to the States.
Well, I just want Priscilla to come spend Christmas with us, Captain.
I know she'd be okay, Elvis, but she's just a child.
Captain, I know you don't want your daughter wandering off with some sex symbol, but I want you to know, sir, that I'd respect her in every way you wanted to respect it.
I'm sure you would.
And I want to marry her someday, Captain. I mean that. She could come stay right here at Graceland. My daddy and my grandma will be right here. And I'd see to it she was put through school, and, well, she'd have the best of everything, sir. I promise you that.
I'll think about it. Give me a little time. I really will think about it.
All right. Goodbye, sir.
And literally, next scene, she arrives.
Oh, God.
So
yeah, it's one of the few John Carpenter films I haven't seen.
It's hard to get. It's hard to get.
Yeah, you do have to go on the pirate seas, I think, to find it. Yeah, listen, in terms of directorial flourishes, there's not a whole lot in it. To shoot a near 3-hour movie in 30 days probably didn't allow much time for that.
All those setups.
Kurt Russell is really watchable in it, and the music's great.
See, one of the things that hamstrings a lot of TV movies is that when you do a TV show, you'll build the sets and you'll accommodate the storylines to fit the existing sets. And you might have, a few extra additional sets that you might build for an episode storyline. But for TV movies, what I've noticed is that they shoot a lot on location. So they get out into the street. There's a lot of exterior shots and using existing locations. So that takes a lot of skill to be able to shoot in places that aren't built to be filmed in. Mm-hmm. And that can let down some TV shows, but also enhance them in other ways.
It can also, add a lot of value.
Yeah, like one that I watched, and it was Kolchak, The Night Stalker.
Night Stalker, yeah.
Oh, that was on my list. I didn't get to tell me. What is it? What is The Night Stalker?
Okay, let me pitch to you in just 2 lines.
The movie of the week.
The X-Files in the hard-boiled style of Raymond Chandler, set in Las Vegas of the 1970s.
May I introduce myself? My name is Kolchak of the Daily Chronicle.
Kolchak reports the bizarre, the supernatural, the unexplainable.
You again is another crazy story.
This nut thinks he is a vampire.
You know what I call that? Irresponsible yellow journalism.
He has killed 4, maybe 5 women. I saw that so-called super killer wipe up the streets with your so-called police force.
They don't want any help from amateur bloodhounds like you.
I've been a reporter for 22 years.
I've been a police officer for 30.
Well, then why don't you retire?
Each man in the field is issued one of these and one of these.
Are you suggesting that we pound one of these into Skorzeny's chest?
No, into his heart.
Darren McGavin, The Night Stalker.
Written by Richard Madison.
The amazing Richard Madison, who, again, just to give a bit of info about him in case people aren't aware, he was the author of I Am Legend, the novel, back in 1954, which was turned into lots of films, including The Omega Man and I Am Legend. And he also wrote some of the most famous episodes of The Twilight Zone, including Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, where William Shatner realizes he's never getting his bag back from Dublin Airport.
Or John Lithgow, if you watch the movie.
Yeah. And he also adapted his own short story, Jewel, into the screenplay that was directed by Steven Spielberg. So we are in very, very good hands here, and he has enormous fun with this world.
Yeah, the movie was such a huge success that it spawned a sequel called The Night Strangler, which I haven't seen, and then a series, Kolchak, The Night Stalker. And as you said, it was very influential on the X-Files. But there's a series of murders that are taking place in Las Vegas. And one of the things I did love about this was seeing what Las Vegas looked like back in the very early 70s.
Yep.
And our lead character, Kolchak, who is an investigative reporter, a bit of a gumshoe, who's narrating the story, believes that the people who have been slain...
The serial killer that's on the loose.
Yeah, the people that have been slain have been bled dry, and he believes that a vampire is running amok.
Chapter 1. This is the story behind one of the greatest manhunts in history. Maybe you read about it, or rather what they let you read about it, probably as some minor item buried somewhere on a back page. However, what happened in that city between May 16th and May 28th of this year was so incredible that to this day the facts have been suppressed in a massive effort to save certain political careers from disaster and law enforcement officials from embarrassment. This will be the last time I will ever discuss these events with anyone. So when you have finished this bizarre account, judge for yourself its believability, and then try to tell yourself, wherever you may be, it couldn't happen here.
It's got that lovely sort of rat-a-tat-tat dialogue where... Oh, what's the actor who plays Kolchak?
It's a guy called Darren McGavin.
So
he had a long career apparently on stage and screen, but you might know him as Adam Sandler's father in Billy Madison. That's really one of the few. That's the best I can do. Yeah.
He has a lot of fun with the dialogue.
He's
never
fantastic.
short of a quick-witted riposte.
And he's got that laconic kind of voiceover too, kind of describing things going on, you know.
Sunday, May 16th. At approximately 2:30 a.m., Cheryl Hughes was standing at the intersection of Casino Center and Fremont Streets waiting for a girlfriend to give her a lift home. Cheryl Hughes was 23, 5 feet 5 1/2 inches tall, 118 pounds, blonde hair, light brown eyes. swing shift change girl at the Gold Dust Saloon. Cheryl Hughes, tired and hungry, but just mad enough to walk the 8 blocks to her small frame house off the corner of 9th and Bridger. Cheryl Hughes, en route to her doom.
It predates the Long Goodbye, the Elliot Gould movie, but it's kind of got a little bit of that in it.
It's not on that level, I should say.
No, it's not on that level.
It's a TV movie, but you'll enjoy it, I think, if you check it out. And it's available on YouTube.
Yeah.
You sold it to me on all counts. It was on my list.
Like, if there is a weakness in it, it's probably when we do see the serial killer and he has the appearance of, like, Pete Doherty on a 3-day bender in the early noughties.
Okay, let's run it again, baby. This time, can you say flipping instead of fucking? Because I have to let that out. Let's roll it. Second question.
But TV series also is kind of interesting. I was just sort of reading up about it, and it had David Chase as the story editor. And it also, so David Chase, creator of The Sopranos, of course, and also
he must have been very young on that.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, and it also gave the very first professional writing credit to Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale.
Really?
Yeah, and even in the episode titles from the one series that they made, you could kind of see how sort of the Monster of the Week format was starting to wear pretty thin. They were kind of running out of ideas. You can see it in the titles. So basically it goes from such titles as The Ripper, The Zombie, The Vampire, The Werewolf, to The Energy Eater, to The Demon in Lace, to John Carney's The Rafters.
Oh, God. No, it's very good. It's very good.
I have to watch it.
It's really good, and it's on. You can find it on YouTube.
The X-Files came about as a result of my love as a kid of 2 movies on television called Kolchak the Night Stalker, which were fantastic and scary and had left a really big impression on me.
You were talking about films. You just kind of brought me onto there. Kevin, earlier you were saying about films that I remember consciously being aware of being a TV movie when I was young.
I have one big one that I want to mention. So go on.
Okay, well, I have one. The one that stands out to me was Stephen King's It. Is that the one you wanted to mention?
Do you know I've never watched that? I just remember the video boxes, and anytime so this is where I become slightly prejudicial against TV movies. But anytime I saw the trailers to It, I always thought that looks really cheap, and I never went for it. So I've never actually seen the original miniseries It.
Worst dream come true. On everything you ever were afraid of.
I wanted to mention that though because
go on.
Would you classify a lot of those 2-parters that they did with the Stephen King adaptations for TV as TV movies?
Yeah, because I think they were originally intended to be broadcast on television. That's where they were being produced.
Yeah, but they're 2-parters. Right? So would you count it as a TV movie? Because one that I remember...
Is that a difference between like a TV movie and a miniseries? Is that what you...
Well, they used to show them over 2 nights. It's like the original Salem's Lot that Toby Hooper directed. I remember that being cut into a single movie. That was, you could rent it.
That, in my head, I would classify as a TV movie because sometimes they would do that with the TV movies back in the 60s and 70s. They actually would split it up to a movie of the week.
Come back for night 2.
Yeah, they would come back. So in the early days, that was a ploy that the networks utilized. So yeah, and they would recut it then as a feature film when they would try to sell it off to foreign territories.
Because I remember seeing when it was reshown on RTE in the late 80s, Salem's Lot, and it was shown over 2 nights. And then I can remember a few years later, we were having a sleepover at a friend's house, and we rented the film. And it was sort of, it had cut it down to, I guess, one big bloody affair, like the Kill Bill idea of combining the 2 into one big movie. Have either of you seen Salem's Lot, the Toby Hooper?
Oh, yeah, a couple of times.
Nope.
Have you not seen it, Pierce?
No.
Oh,
wow.
It is a great, scary time.
Do you believe a thing can be inherently evil? The Marston House, for instance.
How do you like that old house?
Needs work, but we have time.
Open the window. He commands it.
it's only all just happened since
I came here.
Well.
Tried to rape me.
The vampires are creating vampires.
Hey, the thing is moving.
Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Bill! Bill!
Where are you, Benny, darling?
Mr. Barlow is on a buying trip, but the moment he arrives, you'll enjoy Mr. Barlow. And he'll enjoy you.
There are moments in it that are still great, like when the little kid, one of the first victims, he appears at the bedroom window of one of the. Yeah, that scene genuinely scared the living bejesus out of me. Versus a scene very late on, where a climactic scene in a kitchen where
the main bald guy,
the bad
Nosferatu,
the main Nosferatu like creature shows up. It's so poorly shot. It's not the scene itself.
Are you serious?
Oh, it's so poor. Well, it was. I think.
Are you talking about when they bashed the parents' heads together?
Yeah, I think it looks awful.
It scared the shit out of me.
Back, priest! What would you give for this miserable boy?
What do you ask?
What would you give to reprieve him this night, to save him for another night?
What do you want?
The master wants you. Throw away your cross, face the master, your faith against his faith. Could you do that? Is your faith enough? Then do it.
And trust him to let the boy go? Run!
I think they're dead, Father.
Run!
I'm going to kill you.
Now you're part of the bargain.
I'm a priest.
A priest. Throw away the cross. Face the master. Faith against faith.
I think, yeah, watch it now and kind of go, oh yeah, maybe we could do that, make that.
I'm going to go to bat for that. As of all the ones I've watched for this, that has got to be in the top 3, no question.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
It's worth a watch. Okay. I would say it's definitely worth a watch. I'm giving it a thumbs up as well.
Yeah.
Talking about scares, right? Last night. I knew it was on the list, and one of you said, it's actually on YouTube, and I went, oh, I've got to watch this. It was The Woman in Black from 1989.
See, this is where we're very different people.
Where Pierce recommended it.
The director of Texas Chainsaw Massacre did a vampire thing, and it is genuinely terrifying, and you guys are getting the shits about The Woman in Black.
It is.
Creeped the bejesus out of me. Pierce, is that on your list?
It is on my list.
Talk to me about The Woman in Black. Sell it to the listeners.
Okay, so it was broadcast on ITV. It was on Christmas Eve 1989. It's based upon Susan Hill's...
Christmas Eve? They broadcast that on Christmas Eve?
Christmas Eve at 9:30.
No
in the evening.
Way.
Oh my God. Which is quite amazing. So it's based on Susan Hill's atmospheric.
It would be a lot better if they. It would be a lot better if they broadcast it at 9:30 in the morning as the kids.
Yeah, you got your toys. Now watch this.
Sorry.
So it's directed by Herbert Wise, who did I, Claudius, and it's got a script by Nigel Neal, who's best known for his TV adaptations of 1984 and Quatermass in the Pit.
Or if you are me, he is best known for having written Halloween 3 and taking his name off it.
And that too. Here's a rough summary of the story. It's set in 1925. It deals with a London solicitor who's been sent to spend a couple of days recovering the papers of the late Mrs. Alice Drablow at her isolated coastal home known as Eelmarsh House. While there, he starts to have some spooky encounters, in particular with a ghoulish figure of a woman dressed in black, which eventually leads him to uncovering the tragic history of this family, its cursed connection to the area, and ultimately it will result in him bringing that curse home and resulting in one of the most incredibly downbeat endings that you can possibly imagine. And again, watching this on Christmas Eve is just kind of like, what? It's a fantastically executed ghost story. It looks terrific. The production values are really really, really good. It follows a long line of Christmas ghost stories that probably had started with Jonathan Miller's Whistle and I Come to You, through the 70s with all the M.R. James adaptations, which have, like, subsequently, they've started doing them again with Mark Gatiss on BBC4 and stuff in the last couple of years. In comparison to the Daniel Radcliffe kind of version in 2012, which has a jump scare every 3 minutes, this really takes its time. It takes its time. It has a long build up, and I think it's all the better for it. It's building that dread that kind of creeps up in you. You know something's going to happen, but you just don't know when it's going to happen. And it's got a properly malevolent ghost in it, right? It's not Casper the Friendly Ghost here. It's out for revenge, and it's going to get it. And like I said, again, this jump scare that we've kind of mentioned here, which uses the ad break as the most brilliant cliffhanger. Again, that's one of the most memorable things, and the thing that people probably talk about the most when they talk about this version of The Woman in Black. Again, like I said, it was broadcast Christmas Eve 1989 at 9:30 on ITV. The TV Times listing suggested that viewers, in quotes, tuck the children up in bed to wait for Santa's visit and enjoy a polished late-night quiver and quake, which sounds like a metaphor for something else. But it was soundly beaten in the ratings for that Christmas Eve by the film Legal Eagles on BBC One, which got 9 million viewers.
Great film.
From the director of Ghostbusters, an unlawfully funny tale about the legal process, starring a lawyer who tap dances.
I'd recommend Legal Eagles, actually, if you want to watch something. Yeah. I'd recommend that.
But listen, its reputation has continued to grow. 2020 Network DVD put out a fantastic Blu-ray of it. It looks beautiful. It's got a great commentary track with horror expert Kim Newman and the League of Gentlemen's Mark Gatiss. So, and there is a copy of it on YouTube too. So you've no excuse not to gather the family around the TV this Christmas Eve and collectively shit your pants with all the quality street that you have eaten and watch The Woman in Black. Highly, highly recommend.
God, aren't she very easily scared?
I'm with Pierce on this one, because I genuinely started off watching this going, this is going to be a little bit quaint and a little bit naff, particularly in the early scenes where we actually see the Woman in Black very early on in this film. And I went,
she's basically just standing. She's just standing in the background.
Right? Which is kind of like, yeah, it's you when you see it, first of all, you go, come on, we all know what that is. But the film got under my skin because it didn't really waste too much time actually getting into the fact that the solicitor guy kind of faces up to the fact that, there's a ghost here, and there's a mystery element to the plot, and I love that unpeeling of that mystery and that scare in the bedroom. I did not know it was coming. I was expecting one thing, and that happened. And I seriously crapped no, I didn't crap, but I genuinely just went, Jesus Christ. It gave me a great fright.
Yep.
Great fright.
You made a small Civic coffee in your pants, basically.
Yeah, teeny tiny little Pierce brand coffee. Yeah.
This is my reaction of that moment, that jump scare.
We're all entitled to our opinion, Kevin. We're all entitled to our own opinion.
You can do nothing against the master.
We are.
And it doesn't mean
watch Salem's Lot. I'll tell you
if
one
I had
thing.
To pick one. Go on. Keep it moving. Tell me one thing.
Back, priest.
All right. Christmas Day, I didn't see that.
Right.
Maybe nostalgia is a big factor in that one, and you had to have been there at the time.
I just watched it last night.
But
for the first time.
Stop, holy man.
It's my episode. Will you let me talk?
Will you let me fucking finish the fucking story?
I can tell you in 1992 on Halloween night, I was watching one thing that did scare the shit out of me, and it was the very controversial Ghost Watch.
On Saturday night, we'll be visiting the most haunted house in Britain. But will the ghosts be there? Can you take it?
Ghost Watch, a Screen One special for Halloween, Saturday at 9:25 on One.
Yes, I watched it for the first time as well, Kevin, this past week.
Did it scare you, Will?
It gave me chills.
Boom.
It gave me.
Did that scare you, Will?
Kevin, you listen. Here, I'm now on your side, so stop.
Okay,
I'm now trying to bolster your case.
Right.
Don't knock me down. Okay, right. It's very of its time, right? Because it has all of the mise en scène that you would see with an early Michael Parkinson-led TV show.
I don't know what to do. Should we go back upstairs and
But it was very convincing. And I can imagine if you watched this back in 1992 and 1993, I can see how loads of people were totally convinced. I did get really quite spooked with this one as well.
Upstairs. Children, come on.
No, Sarah, stay where you are, please. Sarah, stay there, please. Don't go upstairs.
Why?
Because we hear that Suzanne's got out of bed, but she's not yet
Stay
appeared.
here, I don't know why.
She's not appeared on the landing.
Suzanne, where is she? It could be a piece of its usual misdirection. Trust me, Sarah. Stay there. Suzanne must still be in the bedroom.
But where?
There's a blind spot of camera range right in the corner of the room. Can we cut to the hall camera? No, sorry, the landing camera. No, the landing on the door. The other landing. That's it, and zoom in. Can we pan? Can we pan left? And down.
Come on. Kimmy, you all right? Come on.
It wasn't me!
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Stephen Volk, the writer of it, he pitched it as a series. It was going to be a 6-part series that was going to follow an investigative reporter that was going around to different haunts throughout the UK. And episode 6 was going to be like a live event, like the movie. And his agent came back to him and said, this was in 1988, so it'll tell you how many years it was in development. Came back to him and said, can you do it as a feature instead? I think we'll get more luck that way. And he said, I can, but it'll have to be episode 6. Once they had made that change, everything started to fall into place. They decided to populate it with actual known TV presenters and figures that would convince people that it was genuinely happening. Mike White, who was the husband of Sarah Green, read the script when she was offered it, and he said, this is fantastic, can I have a role in it? He jumped on board. Michael Parkinson came on board. Craig Charles was on there. There was nothing in the actual show itself that told you that this was fiction and it was scripted. The BBC insisted that at the end it had writing credits so that people could sort of glean from that this was not a live event, but actually scripted performance. They had a warning at the front of the episode and pre-publicity, where if you read the TV guide or what have you, it would tell you that this was a dramatic work. But of course, back then, you caught things after they'd started it a lot of times. And there was no way to go on your phone and Google and go like, what the fuck is Ghostwatch? Is this real or is it not? So a lot of people, including myself, were totally duped. And I remember calling up my cousins and saying, did you just watch that? Is it real? Do you think it's real? And they're like, I don't think it's real. And I remember sitting there, I was on my own in the house, waiting for the news to come on to find out what had happened to Sarah Green. Was she alive? Mm-hmm. Like, they're going to have to tell us what happened. And if they don't talk about it, then maybe it wasn't real. But that was the space you were living in, where it's like, you had no way to basically figure out, was this a real event or not?
It was our generation's War of the Worlds broadcast, the Orson Welles thing. That's essentially.
They banned it after that because there were so many complaints. So the BBC would not discuss it. Apparently it was pulled from being up for a BAFTA as well. But it's become quite a cult classic over the last few years. So a lot of Americans have sort of heard about this, and it's percolated down and it's gotten releases. I think you can watch it on Shudder at the moment. But
the one thing that pulled me out of the film, it is fantastic. The one thing that pulled me out of the film is that the scariest epicenter of the kind of the terror of this house is this little cubby hole that's underneath the stairs. And they've boarded it up. But they call the cubby hole the glory hole. And so whenever they talk about the glory hole, I can't help but kind of go, there's a different connotation in 2022.
What's a glory hole?
I don't know, Kevin. Watch Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
A glory hole, also known as a devil's window, is a way to make a living.
I think that's for the Extra Bits podcast. I think we'll explain it to Kevin.
Best bits after dark.
And what I loved about that Ghostwatch is that how they Parky and the whole this TV show edifice kind of is cynical. As in, like, Parky's kind of cynical about the whole ghost thing. Like, yeah, right, everyone's kind of rolling their eyes. And they have this expert, a doctor, sitting opposite him, and she's trying to prove ghosts. So there's a duel going on between the two of them subtly throughout the show. And it pays off in the end. There's a lot of little twists in that story. Oh, it's very good. It's very, very good. It was
very clever because they were leaving you to guess whether what you were seeing was actually happening. Like, there'd be stuff happening in the background. and they'd be asking people to call in if you'd seen anything. And Michael Parkinson wouldn't have noticed it, and you'd be watching it going like, there was definitely something behind him. I definitely saw something.
Yes. And when they would roll back the tape, when I saw it first time, I was like, "Oh, there's fucking someone standing in the corner." And then when Parky pulled it back, they obviously used a different shot where that person wasn't in like the corner, and it was.
And this was before Blair Witch and all that kind of stuff. But if you were to ring that number, they then would have told you that what you were watching is a dramatic work of fiction.
Really?
But yeah, it was very well done.
It's great.
I should say that this tape is completely undoctored. There's no edit on it whatsoever.
We should also warn our viewers of a nervous disposition that the things on this tape that they might find a little bit distressing. Let's hear it.
I can't finish the sentence. But I can't finish Parker's bag. Episode 52. Because fucking Kevin won't let me finish a fucking sentence. Episode 52. Imagine if Sarah Jessica Parker's bag.
Bizarre. And chilling too.
Will we throw another title out there? Another form of horror. Different type of horror this time. Kathy Come Home.
This the train I'm on, and you know that I am gone.
That was very, very sad.
Yeah.
That was a really sad
and just horrific, but essential. And again, I would put it in my certainly top 3 TV movies of all time.
Can you tell people a little bit about what it?
Yeah, it's from 1966, directed by Ken Loach and written by Jeremy Sanford, and it was part of the BBC's The Wednesday Play strand of TV films, which over 6 seasons, between 64 and 70, made 182 productions, of which only 79 survived. Because obviously the BBC had a habit of reusing tape and stuff like that and recording.
Wait, so 180
182
telemovies?
Production. Imagine, I think I mentioned to you before, Kevin, what an incredible way to learn your craft, basically, to have that kind of opportunity to do that. So 12 million people watched it. Broadcast on 16th November 1966. The story is of Kathy, which played brilliantly by Carol White.
Well, I was a bit fed up, There didn't seem to be much there for me. You know how these little towns are. One coffee bar. It was closed on a Sunday. Didn't even tell them I was going. I sent them a card when I got down there. That house over there. Yeah, that one with the broken steps. That's where I went for a room. And the fella kept touching me. Where did I get a room in the end? Oh, yeah, down there. Mantua Street, £3 a week.
And her journey from falling in love, getting married, having kids, and then after her husband gets injured at work, how the system starts to pick apart her life, going from different types of accommodation to emergency accommodation, and ultimately she is forced into homelessness and has her children forcibly taken away from her at Liverpool Street Station in one of the most brutal and harrowing endings to any story you will ever see.
And when you think of the title and you see that scene and the title is Kathy Come Home, God, it's devastating. But that film was so impressive because I was not expecting it to play like a montage. So it's giving you snippets continually of major life events. Like the man that she falls in love with, his mother puts her husband into, or is it her father? Puts her father into care in order to free up a room in the house so that they can move in. And just the devastation of that and the stresses put on the family, and sort of you go from their wistful sort of romance to having a kid, to the mother dying, to getting evicted.
So fast.
And this is all happening
so fast.
But it's spanning years.
It feels incredibly fresh and modern. And again, this is 50, 56 years later,
And so naturalistic. All the performances.
So naturalistic.
Hang on a second. Is this a documentary? So much of it is so real.
I read an interview. Again, there's like a mix of pro and non-pro actors. There's improv. I read an interview with Ray Brooks, who played Kathy's husband, Reg, in the film. He did an interview with The Guardian, and he said, and I'm quoting here, he said, Ken Loach was always fascinated with improvisation, and that was a totally new way of working for me. At the top of the page, it would say, Kathy and Reg walk in park and talk about their future. So we'd know the salient points, but the conversation would be all improvised. He said it was like playing jazz.
We're going along in these hearses, you see, to what they call this unusual supper party. And the bloke who was going in ahead of them, the chandelier falls down on him, you see. And he gets strangled with all these diamonds. And then this big woman, who grown to about 40 foot high.
Oh, that was through the radioactive dust, was it?
Oh, yeah. Well, she sticks around down through this window, you see, and she gets hold of this mean little piece that he's been doing it with, and they've been jitterbugging away.
Oh, it was an old film?
Oh, yes, quite old. But unbeknownst to this big 40-foot girl, you see, there's been a bit of swapping around. And it's not her husband at all anymore. Anyway, as the bloke's jumping up, his mask slips. He slips right down. Who do you think it was?
Duke of Edinburgh.
It's the sky.
He also said that when Kathy and Reg are looking for a place, we turn up in Camden Town and answer real flat-to-let adverts. He said, I would ring the bell and we would say we were looking for a room. The woman would take one look at Carol's bump, which was a pillow up her coat, and say, oh no, we can't have children. Then we'd go back and say we were making a film and can we use the footage if we give them a tenner.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it is that kind of, you don't know what you're watching. It does feel so much like a documentary at times, you know.
What caught me off guard as well is when Irish characters sort of pop up, and you realise how much they were also suffering at that time. And you know, they're in the women's home and they're in these different hostels.
You hear them in the voiceovers and those interviews that are taking place.
I was in the council house, so I was, and then my husband, he buggered off, and they got a scheme there that if you're an abandoned woman, they turn you out. And so then I came here. They say it's to stop men leaving their wives, but it didn't work in my case, did it?
And the film is what it shows up sort of the callousness of petty bureaucrats. And there's a scene where Kathy is told by one of them, he says, don't be a fathead when your time comes. He says, let us take them away without making any fuss. You've had your chance. We're not interested in you now. It's the kids we're worried about.
Yes, when he says that.
And you're like,
yeah, we're not interested in you anymore.
Yeah, and funnily enough, the self-appointed moral guardian, Mary Whitehouse, at the time gave out about the film because of the unfair way it depicted authority, which tells you all you need to know about what side of her shit sandwich is buttered on, quite frankly.
Christ.
But it's very entertaining, because an awful lot of these socially real and socially conscious films can feel a little bit didactic and dour. But this one, you just have immediate empathy, because it begins with two hopeful lovebirds.
Yeah.
And you just watch the degradation of her life, and it's through no fault of her own. It's just bad luck after bad system.
And you see
it's a tragedy.
Yeah, the points at which they are pushed into each increasingly desperate circumstance.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, he's out of work. It's like, well, she's pregnant. She can't, that's the money they have. This is the cost of their rent. They have to downsize, and they downsize and they downsize, and they just push. The system just crushes them.
It feels very modern still.
Yeah, it does. I mean, two of Britain's biggest homeless charities, Crisis and Shelter, were formed sort of soon after the broadcast. I think that was a coincidence for Shelter. I think Shelter was going to happen anyway, but it just, the timing was kind of amazing.
I'd love to see some more of those Wednesday films then.
Loach as well has said in interviews that despite the splash that the film made at the time, ultimately he feels they were just patted on the head and told what a wonderful job they did by the government, but none of the main issues that they were addressing in the film were taken on board. And as Tony Garnett, who's the film's producer, has said, when the film was repeated 2 years later, there were more people homeless in London than there was when it was first broadcast.
Jesus.
So really, you know, how much of a difference possibly did it make? I've seen like more recent interviews with Ken Loach when he talking about it, and just, you know, people asking him, have things changed? Have things gotten better? And he basically kind of says, look, there is more of a safety net maybe now for people, but there's also more and more people being forced to use that safety net.
Success for decades, housing has been seen as a market. We welcome the free market. Every politician is tested on whether he's pro-business or not. If he's not pro-business, God help him, he'll be scorned by every interview on BBC and ITV and in the press if he's not pro-business. But it is that ideology which has reduced housing to huge tower blocks bought as investments by foreign investors and which stand empty. We've committed to one ideology and not to the other one, which is that housing is responsibility for us all to provide houses and provide homes for everyone to live in. But I think it goes beyond that. To make housing work, there has to be a plan. Housing has to be planned alongside work, alongside the social infrastructure of health and schools. It has to be environmentally sustainable. And that's what we need to create. And you can't do that if you leave it to the market. The market builds what will make the most money. It won't build what we need. And that's what we need. We need planned estates as Nye Bevan planned them in the aftermath of the war, where, as he said, only the best is good enough for the working class. And my God, we need that again.
Fuck yeah.
You know, can we really say things are much better now when, you know, you have families having to choose between eating and heating? He says, at least back then, actually, they would be able to get food. But now, for him, it's all about Thatcher in 79, basically getting elected. And that was the kind of defining change of governmental values that moved away from the public good and instead towards private greed and a punitive system of government strivers versus skivers, basically.
Can I bring up one that started life as a TV movie, and it's a little bit more lighthearted, and it is Behind a Candelabra, Steven Soderbergh's film.
So good.
That's a TV movie.
Bye, Rose.
Have a good time.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the star of the show, Mr. Showmanship, Liberace.
Wow. This is my friend Scott Thorson. His first time in Las Vegas. You were incredible out there. Well, this must be fate. I have a great idea. Why don't you come work for me?
As what?
I need a companion, a bodyguard, someone I can talk to. Say yes, Scott.
Mr. Thorson.
Lee's expecting you. I call this palatial kitsch. Wow. Your happiness means everything to me, Scott. You make me feel so young.
Such a loving man.
Is this the kind of life you want for yourself?
My eyes are open, Rose. I promise.
I want to be everything to you, Scott. Father, brother, lover, best friend.
I'll do whatever you want.
Jack, I want to talk to you about doing some surgery on Scott. I want you to make Scott look like this.
Oh, I see. I think maybe this was a mistake. I can't live like this. Everybody looks down on me.
Stop taking those pills. You're always in a mood.
This is not exactly the life that I had planned for myself.
Please don't be unhappy. I can't stand it when you have a face like that. Especially after the money I paid for it.
I have not seen it.
Oh, it is so much fun. Michael Douglas plays Liberace, the audacious and gauche piano virtuoso. And it's told from the whole story is told from the point of view of Matt Damon, someone who's going to be his new boyfriend. It is very...
Liberace was gay?
No.
That's for another Best Bits extra podcast when we
maybe
we can combine the glory holes.
But it is an incredible story of excess and talent and abuse
and makeup effects.
But my favorite, there's an actual scene I love in this. It is about face transformation.
Yeah.
Rob Lowe plays Liberace's cosmetic surgeon.
I've seen that clip, actually.
This clip is amazing. Rob Lowe looks like Michael Jackson on a bad day, where he can't move his eyes, he can't move his face, and Liberace comes out and presents. He says, "Can you do some work on my friend, my Matt Damon's character?" And he says, "I want him to look like this," and he spins around a portrait of himself. And Rob Lowe looks over with that face that's pulled so tight. It's incredible. And says, "Yes, I think we can do it." And at the end of the scene, he takes a drink from a glass of champagne and he can't close his mouth. He just swallows like with his lips still open.
Do you know that happens at the moment? No, with a lot of girls getting, I think they're lip flips and they can't drink from a straw. After that,
stop doing cosmetic surgery to yourselves.
But you said he looked like Michael Jackson on a bad day. I thought that Michael Jackson looked quite good when he was doing bad.
Oh God!
Wasn't the story I heard is that Liberace had to sleep with his eyes open because he couldn't actually close them. Right,
that's in the film.
Yeah,
that's in the film.
Yeah.
He's there.
That can't be true, though.
Matt Damon's looking over at him, and Liberace's snoring, but his eyes are open.
Yeah.
It's true.
Did you ever see Recount? The one that he did with
ago.
Kevin Spacey
years ago.
That was on the George Bush, Al Gore, hanging Chad's affair when they were basically deciding who was going to be the next president. That was very good. Another one of those HBO TV movies.
Yeah.
You see, this in America, they used to have ABC movies of the week, and then they were pumping out a lot of sort of true life movies that you wouldn't really see them get theatrical releases. But if there was some sort of news story that was quite grabby, they would just turn it into a quick movie of the week.
Yeah. Brian's Song is one of those movies. That was one I watched.
This is a story about two men. They competed for the same job. One was white, the other black. One liked to talk a lot.
You said, uh-huh.
The other was shy as a 3-year-old.
Hey, rookies got to stick together.
Our story is about how they came to know each other. Fight each other.
I'm going to whip you, Sayers. But you got to be at your best.
And help each other.
I think I owe you a beer.
I owe you a lot more than that.
Did you watch it?
I did, yeah. It was, it's of its time. But kind of put it that way.
James Caan, isn't it? James Caan stars in that, right?
Well, it's 1971 ABC Movie of the Week. It's the true life story of Brian Piccolo, played by James Caan, who was a Chicago Bears football player, stricken with terminal cancer, told through his friendship with his teammate Gail Sayers, who's played by Billy D. Williams.
Lando.
And again, you kind of get there. Yeah, they were actually the very first interracial roommates in the history of the NFL. Which is kind of like, what? Okay.
In the 70s, they had to segregate them.
Yeah, so this is like, again, mid-60s, they turned pro in, 65 and stuff. Yeah, listen, it's James Caan is terrific. Look, he chews up the scenery. Billy D. Williams is terrific. Again, it's lovely to see him again, I suppose, outside of the couple of movies that I've seen him in, that we've all seen him in, and to be reminded that he's a really good actor. But it's a really sentimental kind of sports movie that probably the Americans would just absolutely lap up. And this basically Billy D. Williams gets an injury, and James Caan's character helps him through it, and then James Caan gets cancer, so Billy D. Williams is by his side. And I don't know. The character that James Caan plays is a self-described racist and bigot, and he does use the N-word quite a lot in this.
What word's that?
Yeah, and Billy D. Billy D. Williams' character is kind of seen as, just letting it brush off him, and yeah, it's okay. Like at the end of it, it kind of turns James Caan's character into, the bravery that he faced the cancer is probably the thing that he should be remembered for, not his racism or bigotry, because that was just the way it was back then, But it's okay. And there's a lot of great American football kind of stuff in it and footage, I think, which they look like they shot on location at games and stuff. So if you're into that, it's definitely worth trying to catch. Again, I don't think it's on YouTube. I think you have to go to the Pirate Seas to try and find that one.
There's another big one that we haven't mentioned so far that I'm surprised hasn't come up.
There's two that are high in my list.
Yep.
But go on.
Is one of them Threads?
That is the top of my list. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Threads is
powerful film.
The United States government has been forced, reluctantly, to take action to safeguard what it believes are legitimate Western interests in the Middle East. We are confident that the Soviet Union will take note of our resolve and will desist from its present perilous course of action.
There's growing evidence overnight from scientists and observers in many countries that there have been 2 nuclear explosions in the Middle East.
In response to today's news of the outbreak of hostilities between vessels of the United States and Soviet navies,
The Ministry of Defence has announced it's sending more troops to Europe to reinforce the British commitment to NATO.
This time, they are playing with, at best, the destruction of life as we know it, and at worst, total annihilation. You cannot win a nuclear war!
The time has now come to make everything ready for you and your family in case an air attack happens.
When you hear the attack warning, you and your family must take cover at once.
The most widespread danger is fallout.
Quite good.
Attack warning.
Attack warning? Is it for real? Attack warning is for bloody real. Is it?
You can't just do a face like that. Go get a titty sign or something.
Again, another one I just watched for the first time this week.
Tell people what it's about.
So, Threads came out in 1984-85, written by Barry Hines.
The guy who wrote Kes?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And directed
Have you
by
seen
Nick...
it, Pierce?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, wow.
It's one for you to watch.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, it's a documentary-style account of a nuclear holocaust when a nuclear bomb is launched and hits Sheffield. And it's about the effect that it has on the working class of the city. The film actually spans a couple of decades from the point of view of one woman particularly. And it's
harrowing.
Horrific, harrowing, so brutally So
very believable as well. It doesn't feel like overly dramatized. You just see how society collapses very quickly.
And so effectively created. We are shown, let's say, when the blast actually happens, we would just have these stark cut to a monitor screen with just titles on it saying 1,000 megaton bomb erupts over Sheffield. These are the things that happen. And it's societal breakdown. We're short on food. So we're just little bullet points, but enough to carry on to, the dramatic sound.
It really gets under your skin because it just feels like, fucking hell, I hope that never happens. And it did have that effect on people that watched it, where it completely turned the tide against nuclear energy.
When did you say it was released?
1984.
84.
The Americans had their own version of it called The Day After, directed by Nicholas Meyer.
Yeah, came out the year before.
159er. In Yeshing. First tower, voice 61.
NATO intelligence sources report a massive buildup.
159, clear for takeoff on lane 5.
Clear ground.
Eastern Post check 9.
The president is presently in direct communication.
Three Soviet tactics deployed.
Current world intelligence situation, and you might pay particular note to the nuclear submarines off the east and west coasts.
Having already captured NATO advanced positions.
Hey, any of you guys hear anything about an alert?
I really don't think either side wants to be the first to use a nuclear device.
It's not a question of who, but where.
East Germany sealed off the borders to West Berlin.
It's not gonna happen.
Four principal West German access corridors.
You're crazy, but not that crazy.
Which Ronald Reagan watched, and apparently it got under his skin enough that he changed the whole, protocol for dealing with nuclear weapons.
That had a big cast. Steve Guttenberg, Jason Robards was the lead in it, John Lithgow. There's a kind of an array of actors would go on to do big things. But again, it was a similar type story where we saw the fallout from the point of view of Kansas.
Which is the better film?
No question. Threads is so effective.
I've not seen The Day After.
It's so effective, so powerful. It showed the power that these films actually had back in the day, because these were being seen by a vast number of people, millions and millions of people, and it was so terrifying that it would affect their opinion.
1 millisecond takes you beyond imagining, beyond tomorrow, and into the day after.
Definitely don't want anything with nuclear attached to it, like, landing on your doorstep after watching these films. Well, Threads is well worth checking out. Still harrowing to this day. Brilliantly made.
A brilliant
Very
film.
much like a Ken Loach film. If Ken Loach made a nuclear fallout movie.
It's got an awful lot of similarities, I think, with Kathy Come Home.
Definitely.
Okay.
Directed by Mick Jackson, who went on to do things like Volcano, LA Story, The Bodyguard, Clean Slate. He had a big Hollywood career after this. So yeah, definitely. It's high.
Volcano.
At the top of my list. It's at the top of my list.
I think, like at the start when we were trying to define what a TV movie is, maybe we can add to the definition of that. Like, there's a tendency for them to have more kind of social commentary than maybe a lot of the films that would have been in the theaters.
Yeah, it's like ripped from the headlines type movies.
Yeah.
There was one you recommended to me, Pierce, that is more of a short film, but it's one that I was unaware of until you pointed it out. And it's Elephant.
Oh, listen, that's the one. That's the one on top of my list here.
I haven't seen
Alan Clark's Elephant. It was made by BBC Northern Ireland in 1988, and it's just under 40 minutes, about 38 minutes long. And again, directed by the legendary Alan Clark. It's produced by Danny Boyle.
Okay.
Yeah, explain how Danny Boyle was involved.
Yeah, well, at the time, he was coming out of like a theatre background, and he really wanted to get into TV and film. And the only way he managed to get a job with the BBC as a producer in Belfast, because at that time, nobody else wanted that job. They didn't want to go over. So Boyle asked Clark then to come over to Belfast, and they together started to develop the idea for Elephant. And there's a brilliant commentary between Boyle and Mark Commode on the BFI box set of Alan Clark's work, which I highly recommend.
And tell us something about how the format of Elephant worked out, because obviously what you have is at the beginning a series of very deliberately repetitious killings in which you see somebody walking, you see a victim, you see a very fast assassination, then you have a shot of the victim afterwards. And this repeats itself in a way which is very disorientating originally for the audience. Tell us how this idea came about. I mean, you don't have a script, you appear to have a graph.
Yeah, we didn't have a script. What happened is I'd already been working for about 18 months in Northern Ireland, and I still lived in London, and I used to fly backward and forward to Belfast. I had lots of friends in Belfast, and what it was based on was this unease, this difference between the way the public in London and the UK without Northern Ireland perceived the Troubles at that point, which was the mid-'80s. And basically what was happening is that there was very little interest, other than in enormous events like Inniskilling, which happened at the time. There was very little interest in what I could see was going on day to day in Northern Ireland, which was a relentless series of civilian deaths, executions, basically, like you see. Sure. And the Northern Ireland Press Office at the BBC issued this list, which became really the script of the film, which was a description broken down into categories of who died each year. And it was the way that when the Troubles first began, there was a lot of army, OUC, UDR personnel killed. Mm. And then basically as they were withdrawn, and there were less deaths there amongst those kind of what you would call targets, really. But the civilian deaths continued at an alarming rate. And it drew me to thinking about why people didn't know about these deaths. And so we decided to make a film that tried to show that, really, and tried to show in a way that wasn't in a traditional drama, wasn't moralistic. You know, it didn't have a conclusion, it didn't have any redemption, it didn't have the normal techniques of drama, to find a different way of describing it outside the bounds of drama. The intention was not to show the film in Northern Ireland, because everybody was aware. People lived with this day in, day out. They were very conscious of it. Unfortunately, it went out in Northern Ireland as well as the rest of the UK, and it upset people there because they didn't need to see this kind of film. It was more for the mainland, and the way that our relationship with the press and what the press had chosen to show us of Northern Ireland had actually kind of immunised us to what was actually going on there.
So what Clark and Boyle came up with here were a series of scenarios, there's 18 in total, where we are forced to bear witness to kind of brutal killings with absolutely no context given. They just, again, in a lot of them, you're just following along with a person, obviously walking along with them for a long time, and then there's just a very quick, brutal killing, and that's it.
It's like one after the other.
18 of them, one after another. As Boyle says himself in that commentary, he says there's no sense of redemption, no kinds of moralizing, or even a conclusion that we might associate with a piece of drama.
You learn nothing about the victims or the killers.
It's just a relentless repetition of killings that provokes eventually an emotional reaction out of us as we watch. We get this kind of gut reaction of, for God's sake, make these killings stop, and yet they go on and on. It's on YouTube. It's a beautiful looking movie, right? Not in a Terrence Malick.
It's all Steadicam.
Yeah, it's not in a Terrence Malick Magic Hour kind of way, but it's the use of the Steadicam by John Ward, who had worked with Kubrick as a Steadicam operator on Full Metal Jacket. And so that Steadicam in combination with a wide-angle lens as we follow like these characters around who are either going to kill or be killed, these characters. That camera just kind of pulls you along, whether you want to or not. Sometimes they're very, very long takes of characters just walking. And again, you have that symbolism, in the north of walking, marching. And it's often through kind of empty industrial spaces where like the lights are on, but there's nobody there working, which again is possibly a commentary on Thatcher's Britain too. And it's just stunning.
Was it shot in Northern Ireland?
Yes, it was. It was shot in Belfast, which is unusual because generally most of the time if they're shooting a thing about Northern Ireland, you'll shoot it in Leeds or somewhere like that, But no, right. Alan Clark was very particular about that. He wanted to shoot in Belfast, which, would bring a certain amount of problems, but, the film is all the better for it. So the reaction to the film at the time is fascinating. And again, on that BFI box set, one of the extras is a clip from a show called Open Air, which was a kind of a points of view mailbag type of program where the next morning viewers could kind of ring in and ask the program makers whatever question they had. So after the day of transmission, Danny Boyle is in the studio and he's answering phone calls, most of which are from Belfast and are angry with them.
We're going to take a call now from Eleanor Launchbury, who's phoning us from Belfast. Your comment, please, Eleanor.
Well, I'd like to begin by saying that the programme made me extremely angry. 15 minutes into the programme, I reached for the telephone. What I would like to ask is, if you insist on portraying these murders in the way that you have, why not go the whole hog and be factual about it? It was quite noticeable. All we saw were the assassins and the victims. Now, so many of these tragic murders have occurred. Men have been shot in front of their wives and children. Shopkeepers have been shot in a shop full of customers. If you're going to do this, show it as it is, not some stylized version of it.
Yes, because taking Eleanor's point, there was no response from neighbours. Nobody ran out. There was no kind of assistance from anyone at all. Could you answer her point?
Yes. Well, when we started researching the project, Eleanor, we did consider portraying them in a much more documentary fashion. I mean, we rejected that for a number of reasons. I mean, I think, personally, it's unacceptable to show the killings in the exact way that they do occur. Some of the details which we looked at are so distressing, I was unable really to consider showing them at all. As you mentioned, particularly children, who are often witnesses to the deaths of their fathers, particularly. So we also wanted to try and achieve some kind of stylization in the piece to prevent it being a documentary. Consequently, people, in order to try and capture this idea that these men never seem to be caught running away, you never hear that in the way that you do, for instance, on a bank robbery in England. There's always witnesses. You never seem to get that impression, and we wanted to create that through a stylization, really, through a distilling of the act down to its very simple, terrible...
So in stylizing it, you want to make it less offensive?
If anything, yes.
Yes, but Eleanor, that didn't work for you, I take it.
Oh, not at all, no. I was deeply offended and I was very, very angry by it. There's nothing to indicate where it was happening. It could have been anywhere. There was nothing which said it was Belfast. There was nothing that it said who was killing who and for what reason. It was just men running around with guns,
yes,
emptying them into a helpless victim.
Completely out of context, that's right.
We wanted to avoid the context, really, because it becomes so complicated. And to be honest with you, Eleanor, as soon as we do contextualise it, certain people begin to justify it from one angle and certain people from another angle. And we wanted to avoid that and leave that really for other works about Ireland that wanted to deal with that.
You see, however you stylise it, Eleanor, because I'll just butt in if I may, Sammy Miller, also from Belfast, Sammy was paralysed in a similar attack to the one shown last night. In 1981, this happened to him. And he thought the play was in extremely bad taste, and it made him relive the day and the event and the injury and the whole horror of it.
Well, obviously, I mean, that's terrible. And all I can say about that, really, is that I think people who work in this kind of field, we have to use sometimes, and with great regret often, the pain that some people suffer as our raw material. I think all people who are working in dramatic films do that, I'm afraid. Right. And we did take as many steps as we could to avoid any incident directly reflecting one that actually happened.
It's amazing.
That's going on my watch list, Pierce, no question about it.
Your favourite TV movie is Threads?
Yes.
And yours is Kathy Come Home?
Yeah, it would be Kathy Come Home, yeah.
Do you want to know what mine is?
Can I give you the two honourable mentions?
Unfortunately, we don't have time, Kevin.
What are your two honourable mentions, Will?
I'll do one honourable mention. I'll bring it down. Well, one honourable mention was, I said I'd bring it back to Ireland a little bit, something that was produced in Ireland and might be stretching the parameters a little bit, but I have to say, Roddy Doyle's The Family from the early 90s. It was.
Wasn't that a TV series?
That was a series, wasn't it?
It was a mini. I thought it was a mini series, wasn't it?
Well, series.
Okay. Yeah. Cut that. Right.
I think The Sopranos is the best TV film ever.
My one honourable mention.
The Wire.
I thought it was like 4. I thought it was 4 episodes. 4 episodes. Anyway, my one honourable mention, Kevin. My one honourable mention is a film I watched recently as well about the discovery of the AIDS epidemic. It's called And the Band Played On.
Okay, what we've got in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and New York is a number of gay men who've been hit with a variety of opportunistic infections, and really that's all we know. I've asked Don to join us because for the last 3 years, he's been tracking hepatitis B virus in gay men, and before that worked on the Ebola fever epidemic in Africa. Yeah, thanks for joining us. What we've got to do is hit the phones and spread out, contact the health departments in all the major metropolitan areas as usual, so they can do a hospital-to-hospital search for cases.
Basic shoe leather epidemiology.
That's it. We've got to talk to the patients, talk to the doctors who may have treated those patients, and friends, relatives. No question too stupid or too personal.
Sexual relationships, too.
Lifestyle stuff. Household chemical cleaning, diet.
Could be a bad batch of street drugs.
Pets.
Yeah, maybe they all get the same kind of kitty litter.
It came out in the early 90s, about 93. Stars Matthew Modine, Alan Alda. There's big guest
stars. That title is familiar, but I don't know it.
Richard Gere's in it, Steve Martin's in it, and it's all about, as I said, the discovery of the AIDS epidemic and about the political infighting of the scientific community.
Was this the same year as Philadelphia?
Actually, it might have been the same year. Yeah, it might have been the same year. So it's actually really well made. Directed by Roger Spottiswoode,
director of Terror Train,
and director of one of the Bond movies. I think he made Tomorrow Never Dies, and it's written by Arnold Schulman. It's actually really well shot.
That was a good insight there, Pierce, into our frame of reference for both of us.
Good to know.
I watched it. I thought it was actually really well made film and an interesting point of view on, like, what was kind of sickening about it was how egos got in the way of the efforts to try and identify and conquer the AIDS epidemic for almost a decade. And it was like egos.
It's incalculable, the loss that we had in terms of music, fashion, writing, filmmaking. God knows where we would have been if all those people weren't wiped out, because a lot of them were on the bleeding edge of creativity and artistry.
Liberace. We lost Liberace. He died of AIDS.
Are you sure he was gay? I need to...
At the end of it, there's a kind of a montage. It's kind of very much of its time, where it was kind of very self-congratulatory. But you see all the faces of all people who have died from AIDS, and it is actually quite potent. Where you see things like Freddie Mercury and Liberace, all these faces. You go, crikey!
When did you say this was made, Will?
93. Denham Elliott. Even seeing Denham Elliott from Indiana Jones just gave me a real shock. I was going, oh no, like all these people wiped out over the course of a decade. Thousands and thousands of people.
Leave it to me to get some disease nobody ever heard of. Kaposi sarcoma. Even my doctor had to look it up.
But anyway, it's worth a watch. It's of its time, but it's well made, really well performed, and an interesting story. So that's.
And in America, there's controversy at the moment because the drugs that they have at the moment that can essentially wipe out AIDS, prevent it being spread from person to person, they're charging exorbitant amounts of money for it. And it's the same with insulin. America is treating healthcare as a capitalistic endeavor to make money is so immoral. Yeah.
And that's where a good movie of the week could come in and highlight this topic. If we were back in the day when people were watching movies like they were, like movies of the week, because
like the Langoliers. I mean, totally changed airport travel for me.
I have an important business meeting in Boston this morning at 9 o'clock.
Would you please be quiet? You're scaring the little girl.
Scaring the little girl? Scaring the little girl? Lady, we're diverting to some tin pod airport in the middle of nowhere. I've got better things to think about than scaring the little girl.
One observation I have from watching so many of these.
Good. Observations are what we want. We need point of view. What's our observation?
Is that the UK television output far outshone the stuff that came out of America, the best of the American. No question about it. The quality of the output that came was absolutely phenomenal. If you look at the things we've spoken about, from Threads, Kathy Come Home, The Woman in Black, all of those.
Ghostwatch.
Ghostwatch.
We haven't even talked about like Mike Leigh and his TV work and stuff like that, and
just phenomenal quality of work. So that's just an observation I have. I think
is it possible because certainly in the 1970s the British film industry was pretty much dead, apart from Confessions of a Window Cleaner and those kind of movies.
When in what decade?
Well, in the 70s and then also into the 80s.
Well, it was wiped out by Thatcher, wasn't it?
There was more decline under Thatcher again.
Yeah. I mean, people forget that the UK film industry was just churning out fare that could compete with Hollywood. There was so much indigenous filmmaking going on, and the profits were going back into funding studios and with the Ealing comedies and Hammer, and there was just so much getting made. Do you remember there used to be was it the Children's Film Fund or whatever? They used to have
Film Foundation.
Yeah, Film Foundation. I remember one that I was convinced was a TV movie until I looked up for this, called The Glitter Ball. But apparently it was out in cinemas in 1977. But I remember catching that on TV as a kid as well and thought, that looks like a TV movie to me. It's pretty shite. But
well, talking about shite, we mentioned before as well the Trilogy of Terror one as well, which I watched.
I haven't seen that.
Which
I did not know that was a TV.
Yeah, you said you just saw it as a movie.
Yeah, I thought it was a theatrically released movie.
Which, again, it is on YouTube. You can find it. It's 3 short stories. Basically, it's an anthology film. It's all Richard Matheson, again, all of his stories.
Do I make
make you nervous, Doctor?
Karen Black, a major star, creates a television first.
There's a golden chain wrapped around it to keep the spirit from making the doll come to life.
Face to face to face with the unbearable unknown. Trilogy of terror.
The first two segments are pretty ropey. The third one is kind of memorable because there is this doll that comes alive. Karen Black is in all three stories. She plays all the kind of the main characters in all three.
Well, the one that we have glanced at, but we haven't delved too deeply into, is probably the greatest TV movie of all time. It launched one of the greatest filmmakers of all time into a stratospheric film career. And it was written by Richard Madison, starred Dennis Weaver. It was shot in 13 days for like $400,000. It was released within a month. So from the moment that they started shooting to when it was out there on TV screens, it then got recut and was released theatrically in Europe. But it's Steven Spielberg's Jewel.
An amazing pick. An amazing
Whatever
pick.
happened to him?
Yeah.
Whatever happened to him?
You watched that film today, and it is as gripping.
Which I did do.
Did you watch it today?
I did. I watched it today just to refamiliarize myself with it. And it is gorgeous to behold. Like, just the colors alone. It goes back to what I was saying about one of the things I like about TV movies is that they shoot an awful lot on location. Spielberg was shooting on the same road, putting multiple cameras, getting the truck to turn around and drive back the other way and cutting it so that it looked like it was one long stretch of road. When you think back to the massive cameras that they had to use back then, and he's like squeezing that into a car so he can get all these interesting angles of Dennis Weaver while he's driving. It's incredible what they were able to pull off in 13 days, and he'd gone 3 days over. So it was meant to be shot in 10 days. But it's essentially just a car chase film where Dennis Weaver is harassed by a faceless, nameless, mysterious truck driver who gets into a duel with him. And it grabs you, holds your attention, and it's one of my favourite Steven Spielberg films.
It's up there, yeah.
What age is he when he made that? Was he 23, 24?
12.
12?
So it was 19. He was 24.
My God. Like a kid.
Yeah. He was 23, 24. Incredible. And it stands up against all of his recent output. I would put it ahead of like some of his big blockbusters that he's had out in recent years, like War Horse and Ready Player One and all those sort of like huge budgeted films.
And just even the appearance and look of the chasing truck is such a character. You know what I mean? Just the look of it. It's like an extension of, the Cars universe. I can imagine it being in Pixar's Cars just turning up. It almost has a face that you're looking at,
Yeah.
Again, it's another TV movie that was inspired by a real life event.
Really?
So, yeah.
What was the real life event?
Somebody was harassed by a truck while they were driving along the road.
Oh, wow.
Tell me more.
Richard Madison then wrote it as he wrote it as a novella in Playboy magazine. It was that he then adapted. But yeah, it's a fantastic film, and although we shouldn't be saying this, but it is available on YouTube to watch in high definition if you are so inclined, and I would absolutely recommend it.
I'm so shocked that it's still available. Wow. Because when I last watched it years ago, it was on YouTube, and I went, oh my God, this amazing film is on there, and it looks great. It is so kinetic. It has got great energy. The editing is top quality in this film, but it's also the dynamic shots, as you already mentioned, that he manages to capture. Really, such an impressive film. Just full. It's just ballsy. Really ballsy.
But think about that, like 13 days to shoot that. They drove 2,000 miles in the course of shooting the film, and it was on TV screens within 4 weeks. Incredible.
Dennis Weaver as well, we got to say, what a performance by him. He's carrying the movie really with his expression.
He's an interesting protagonist because he's very weak and insipid character who's getting pushed around. And I guess it is about him standing up to this faceless foe. But a fantastic film.
I went back to my old ranking of Spielberg films, and it's number 5 for me. It's up there. It's like in the top 5.
I was sitting around the office one day looking through scripts, continuing to write, trying to get my feature film ideas off the ground, trying to get somebody to hire me. And my assistant, Nona Tyson, found Duel. She said, I read this article, this short story by Richard Matheson, in Playboy magazine. I said, what do you think reading Playboy magazine? No. Are you kidding? She said, no. But she said, I love the fiction. And she said, I want you to read the short story. I think this is right up your alley. And I read the short story, and I said, wow, this is terrifying. This is like a Hitchcock movie. It's like Psycho with the birds, only it's on wheels. A truck chasing a salesman through the desert. And she said, well, I also found out that Richard Matheson is writing a screenplay that they're going to do as a movie of the week, and it's being produced by George Eckstein. She gave me all this information. So I called up George Eckstein, who didn't know me from Adam, knew of me because they used to call me Scheinberg's Folly, because I was the young kid he had hired. I think was the youngest person ever signed under a term contract in Universal's history. And I wasn't really that highly regarded. I was this abstract kind of young person that only loved lenses and dolly shots and didn't know anything about acting. That's at least the reputation I had then. And I called George Eckstein up and I said, I've read this short story, haven't read the script yet, I'd love to talk to you about this. And so he invited me over to his office and he asked for me to bring the work I was proudest of, so you can see an example of my most recent work. So I brought over the rough cut of Columbo, which hadn't even aired yet, but I brought the rough cut over. And I left him with the rough cut after we had his conversation. He saw the cut. Then he called me back to his office and he said, okay, give me your ideas and how you'd like to make this into a movie. And he gave me the script of Duel. And I read the script, and I came back, had another meeting with George, gave him all my ideas, and he said, well, I'll get back to you. And a day went by, 2 days went by, I didn't hear a thing. On the third day, I got a call from George who said, okay, I'd like you to direct this. It was like the greatest phone call. It was the second greatest phone call I ever had. The first being when Scheinberg called me and got me out of college to be a director. And the second one was when Eckstein called me and said, I'd like you to direct Duel. And that's sort of how it all began.
If we were to go back to what we usually do on our episodes where we pick our favourite scenes, I would highlight the phone booth scene when he is trying to make a desperate call home.
Yeah,
and then
I love it. Absolutely love it, Kevin. Brilliant film. Great scene.
Well, we've recommended enough TV movies there for people to check out.
People are going to be square-eyed watching all of these TV films. Right.
But we don't have to spin the wheel, Will, because we know what the next episode is.
It's movies within movies, Kevin. That's what we've got next time.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that. I've already started the research, which is exciting.
Do you know what I'm thinking, though, Will? I think we can throw another topic into that because that one sounds a little thin. So I'm going to spin the wheel here.
You're going to mix it up. What are you doing?
And
here, stop
the second topic that you're going to tackle is best breaking the fourth wall scene.
It's movies within movies within movies.
The next episode, we'll do movies within movies and breaking the fourth wall. How's that?
Well, in actual fact, I think I can tie those together, as a matter of fact.
I can't wait to watch that magic happen and listen to it, lads.
You're welcome to join us if you bring the coffees.
Lads, I have to go because I'm about to shit myself.
Okay.
That coffee has gone right through me.
It really does, doesn't it? It really does.
Flapjack is so tasty. It's got a lovely aftertaste. That's all I'll say.
Pierce, where can people find you?
People can find me on Pierce's Writing on the Twitter. On the Twitter, you burst. That's where I am. For all your coffee needs and whatever else.
Are you on OnlyFans?
Well, don't pretend that you don't know.
Who does the wheel? Where can we find him?
He's in Kulakland. That's Mix Wheel Repair and Tattoo Parlor. Excellent. Just tell him Pierce sent you.
Well, there you
Brilliant,
go.
Pierce. Man, you've given me some films to watch, Pierce. My watch list has gotten longer. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this topic.
Not a problem.
There you go.
What I love about doing this show, Kevin.
Oh, Jesus.
I could see Kevin shrug when I kept on speaking.
No, because I'm trying to wrap up. I want to
cut me out. What I love about doing this show is that with these topics, I end up watching films that I would never otherwise ever watch, or watch films I would never watch. And I've watched some gems.
That's why you watch Grabbers for this podcast.
yeah, that's the only reason I watch. Still haven't watched Grabbers. I've never seen it.
Oh dear.
Kevin, wrap us up, please.
If you like this episode, please like, share and subscribe, rate, review us, all that good stuff. Tell your friends about us. It really helps the podcast grow and other people to discover us. And if you want to hear more of us waffling on, we're over on Patreon putting out bonus podcasts all the time. They're well worth checking out.
Yeah, Pierce is on OnlyFans. Thanks very much for listening. Bye.
Bye. Toodaloo.
Thanks, Pierce.
€18 a month is pretty high tier, Pierce.
Paid by the inch.
Good luck.
See ya.
The Best Bits podcast is produced by Will and Kevin.
All audio clips and music heard in this episode is the intellectual property of the respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider becoming a Patreon member, where you'll receive bonus shows where we talk about recent releases and what we're up to.
And you'll receive access to our Discord chat room, where we hang out with our listeners.
Search the Best Bits podcast on Patreon or click on the link in the show notes.
Stop, holy man!
And here is a clip from the lads' latest Mini Bits bonus show. The full episode, plus 80 more, are available on their Patreon.
See ya, Mossy. I gotta go in and record another one of these fucking mini bits.
Oh, yes, this is all it.
I know. What are you doing?
Right now, on the Academy screener site, and I hit play, because there's only a few films on it for the first month or two. There's only like about less than 10 films on it. And Guy Ritchie's The Covenant is on here. So I hit play on that. And I'm hearing we're out in Afghanistan, and I'm hearing all the dirt, and I hear vehicles, and I hear the sound effects of characters walking. But when characters open their mouths, I don't hear any dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's
no dialogue.
They've uploaded the wrong audio track. It's like that Tom Cruise trailer where it was just the sound effects.
Have you met an SP?
Yeah, and this film's been up on the screen site for a few weeks now, and they still have the wrong one here. Well, I tell you what films are actually up there for all Academy members to see, and to see what they've put up there.
But first of all, let's just throw to our theme. And I have to say, the feedback from my thank you ballad was quite fierce.
The power of Christ compels you!
So I asked Mossy, who is a friend of my dad's at the quiz, sing us a theme tune.
Oh.
So over to Mossy.
Hit the cards. I'm fine, I'll get it done in one take. It's the Mini Bits. Or podcast, what will they say? With Will and Kevin Cock.
Their best fucking podcast.
That'll do.
That'll do.
My God.
Thank you, Mossy.
You would make an angel weep. That voice would make an angel weep.
Telling you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Boolabus.
It only cost us 2 months Patreon money, so,
Is that all? Money well spent, in my eyes.
Yeah. I mean, you can't get much for €20. Will, you were telling me before the intro that you were looking at stuff on the Academy Screeners website.
The Academy Awards. So for official members, yes. So they don't send out DVDs anymore. So how you do all your streaming stuff is all via the Academy website. And the streaming season has begun, which is exciting. So it means for the rest of the year...
Did it ever end?
It does end. It does. After the Academy Awards, there's about 2 weeks, and they take all the films down, and then they begin again at the end of August, and they all start coming up. So it's a whole new collection of hopefuls.
So how many films are on there?
Right now, about 10. Actually, 10 exactly. I can tell you the 10.
Oh, go on, tell me.
John Wick 4.
For the Oscars. Oh, because there's like...
Yes, they're adding in stunt category, aren't they?
Are they adding it in? Is the stunt category being added?
I believe they're adding in some sort of stunt category.
Breaking news straight from an Academy member's mouth.
Because they're adding in stunt category, aren't they?
Slash film.
I don't know. Did I read this in an article? I feel they were.
I
felt they were.
Have long overlooked stunts, and my God, it's pure artistry.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly, well, these days, it's all fucking rubber computer generated avatars.
That's why we should that's why these people should be getting their Oscars when someone's actually gone out there. Yeah,
go back,
absolutely.
Go back and give it to your man from Mad Max who broke his legs.
Give it to Richard Farnsworth, who was a stuntman and starred in The Straight Story. Yeah, Richard Farnsworth was a career stuntman.
Oh.
Absolutely.
Wasn't that also the case with Machete? What's your man, Machete? Danny Trejo.
Danny Trejo.
Is
really?
It Trejo or Trejo?
I always call him Trejo. He just says, call me Danny.
I was going to say that back to you.
Nah.
Because we just call it